Hey, what's up? Silas here. I'm going to talk about translation and if or not the action of doing so is considered racist. For example, let's say you're an English speaker, but you speak a few other languages, and you may physically look like you speak a different language, and then you go to, like, say, a restaurant, and somebody gives you the menu in that opposite language, in that language that's not English. Is that kind of a racist thing? Now, what made me think of this was this article I saw. There's a group I follow on some social media, and it's kind of like it's not really a troll group, but it posts different memes and different political things and different things and makes fun of this things here or points attention to these news stories here and there. And this story was about there's going to be this picture on the screen. There's going to be links in the low bar to this. It was from the BBC News Pidgin, and the title was "Why Them They Call Hurricane Human Being Name." BBC News. The first line was hurricane season don't start since June 1 and go end November 30th. But how the name they take come. Yeah, you can see just even just trying to read it kind of is not an easy thing to do. And this is what the person who posted this was like, this is real, after laughing in all caps. And they said, who do you think this is for? Is this going to help or hurt that demographic? When you see headlines like math and English are prejudiced towards minorities, this is the outcome they want. This is what they want your kids' textbooks to look like. What a joke. So I saw that, and then I first saw it, like my general reaction to that was I thought it might have been some troll thing, because there are these websites or there are these applications that you can add to your browser, and they'll change certain things to a certain language. Not even just the general translator ones, but there was one, for example, that took every title. It was something I think to do with feminism, where it takes every title they're talking about men, and then it switches out men with women, or it switches out men with males or with black men or something like that. So it just switches these things around. There's some interesting words you can kind of check out to see. But when it came to this, I decided, let me go check out the site. And with the HTML name, it was written Pidgin there, and of course Pidgin was also written there on the top bar of the header bar of the website. So I typed in Italian to see if there's an Italian version. Nothing. 404, no page found. I typed in French, and it took me to Afrique, which is not Afrique. Afrikaans is from it's from South Africa. Afrique was a francophone site, which is based off of the I think it was the countries in Africa that were colonies of France. They speak francophone, which is a mix of it's a dialect, it's a vernacular of French and the languages that are in Africa in those countries. So that's spoken in a bunch of African countries, West African countries mostly. So I typed in Spanish, and it took me to BBC El Mundo, which is a Spanish language site, which I guess is targeting Spanish speakers, I don't know, just in Spain, but probably in Latin America and places like that. So my response to that was the world would benefit if everyone spoke at least one language, one common language, and then they can add as many others as they want. But if there's a separate section to an actual official language, then I don't really care that much, you know? So the Mundo for Spanish, there was Afrique for Francophone, and I checked why weren't they ones for maybe Italian, why weren't they ones for Swedish, why weren't they ones for these other ones for German? Because those countries, those languages probably already have their international news channels. So BBC is thinking we already have this in English. We've kind of maxed out our English speaking listeners, so let's extend our market and try to get these other people who may not be as well served with news about the world as English speakers, or German speakers, or Swedish speakers, or Icelandic speakers. I don't know about Iceland. But anyway, so I thought, okay, not a big deal. On this post, somebody answered, and I checked this guy's profile later on, and it turns out I think he's of recent African descent. With his last name, it was something that was, I think, West African, and he wrote this. He said, "Thank you. The BBC's target audience is West African people who speak this type of broken English, or broken English." I don't know if he put the double O's on purpose, and maybe that's the kind of way they write it. I don't know why some of these idiots on here are losing their expletive, typical Yankees. And to that, my general reaction to that was first like, oh, why are they jumping on this? But this comes to the communication, this comes to the translation thing. And I told him, like, there's no need to call people idiots here. You know, the overreaction, his overreaction to their overreaction to the material doesn't really help anything. The reason BBC is translating these sites, translating this information, the topic at hand here is translation worthwhile? Does it make sense to translate one thing to one language so somebody else can understand it? Does it make sense to reach out to the people who are speaking Pidgin, the people who are speaking Francophone, the people who are speaking Spanish? Does it make sense to translate the material to them so they can understand it better? And the person contending, I think the person who originally posted it thinks this is about a breakdown of the Western culture, about English going away from schools. And no, it's not like they're saying we're not going to create the English content anyway and we're going to switch it out with this. And with this guy, I think from him seeing that they didn't really understand why BBC was doing this, I was like, look, the person writing this in to begin with couldn't relate to why BBC would decide this was something to do. So instead of you just overreacting and saying typical Yankees, like that person initially said, oh, typical BBC, typical liberals, typical destruction of the West and all that's English and etc., do a better job of maybe trying to relate to where they're coming from. If you can relate, like I can, having lived in Nairobi, there's a Sheng that's spoken there, which is a mix of Swahili and English. And also traveling around the United States, you travel around to different places, different cities, even different boroughs in one city can have very different accents and different vernaculars and different dialects where it's almost an entirely different language. So I think it's kind of good to get that ability to kind of pause and not just react on these things and kind of try to relate it to those people and write, like, look, is it actually worthwhile to translate what you're feeling so somebody else can understand it? Who is the person to do that? Who is going to try and actually benefit from doing that in a situation? So, what do you guys think? What do you guys think about the spread of this? Like, as I said, for me, I like English. I really love English. I really love the English language. You might have seen some of my other videos with different accents and going into different things where I can kind of go back into that. But I don't really find that's communicating what I need to communicate in certain situations. So I do understand slang. I do understand using different languages, using different words. Like I could sit here and probably go into a dictionary and just try to use like the biggest words possible to describe what I'm saying. But you have to get to a point where you're trying to understand what is the best way to convey the message that you have from one position to another position. That being said, I have to say that with the BBC doing this, I am a bit suspicious of the BBC itself because the quality of some of the stuff, the spin it's putting on different stories, the way it's going to be presented to people, they might be... I think I'm definitely glad that there's other independent sources of media and information coming out, and from what I've seen from my experience, I think Nairobi in Kenya, they finally have an international, they have a 24-hour news channel now, but there's actually different forms of information spreading and news coming in those actual locations. So they're going to be well served very soon, if not already, in some of these places. So going back to what I was saying, I think if it's going to be one language that we all speak, let's pick English. I like it. I'm biased towards it. I think it's an awesome language. And then you can learn as many other languages as you want to. I know you see some things with some languages dying and people are like, oh, we need to save this language, we need to save this language is spoken by these like 50 people. And I'm like, does it really matter? I don't really think it does. I mean, people can invent new languages. Some languages die off. Like, for example, Elvish was invented by by Tolkien. And then he created the Lord of the Rings universe so that language could be spoken in there. So people can invent languages. Other languages can pass on. I do know there might be some specific knowledge that's actually tied into actual languages that actually benefits keeping that language as it is. But who knows? What do you guys think? What do you guys think of at least getting to a situation where we encourage, or we get to a situation where at least everyone can speak one language, at least at a basic level, so we can at least, when we need to communicate, fall to this default language. If we need to go to another country and we see another place and we need to get to somewhere, we don't necessarily have to... But wait. I mean, I was going to say like the signs and the things like that, double printing things, the cost of all that, and soon going to get to a point where we just get to have like a mechanical eye that just translates everything, or you have phones. But yeah, so things are being solved to do this. Do you guys think we should have one language? What do you guys think of BBC having the Pidgin, these different versions? Do you think it's like a racist thing? Do you think it's taking away from English? Do you think it's... what do you guys think? What do you guys think about translations? What do you guys think about different languages? How many languages do you guys speak? Can you imagine not being able to speak the main language you speak ever again? Do you know somebody that actually doesn't speak the same language that you do, or at least you don't have a language in common, and you still consider it kind of a friend or something like that? But yeah, that's the video for today. Till next video, like, share, and subscribe. Goodbye.